YouTube is an incredible resource for learning.
In this video, we're talking to sound designer and musician Suddi Raval.
Did you know that Suddi got into the UK singles chart?
You forgot to mention that he's worked on about 1 million games. Suddi, what is your training?
There was an individual who I met very early in my introduction to the music industry. My band member, who sadly isn't with us anymore, his name was Jonathan Donaghy. We formed a band. It would be fair to say that I knew very little about music production, music technology, and the creative process, and even music theory. But my head was bursting with ideas, and I wanted to do things. I wanted to go into the recording studio, and I wanted to make music. Somehow he saw there was something in me that might be successful or popular or might turn into something that could be liked by others. And he put us in the studio and basically taught me most of what I know today. I'm eternally grateful for that. I'm incredibly lucky to have that opportunity. Then I went to a college called the School of Excellence in Manchester. But in all honesty, by that time, I knew most of the workings of music technology, if you like. I read non-stop and I was just obsessed with that world once I got into making music. It was quite funny, really, because I was on the course and the teacher very often asked me, "Is that correct, what I've just said?" He realised that I knew a fair bit by that time. They ended up offering me a position to work at the college, which I did for a brief period. The very important thing about that course is, and this is something which I have found that happens when young people get into education, is obviously the qualification is very important, but the people you meet. Very often you will meet people who are on a similar wavelength, and they will open doors for you, open opportunities for you, and make connections that you may not have had before. And there was somebody at that school who said to me, "I've got a friend in the video game industry who wants their soundtrack to be remixed. They're looking for somebody." I remember giving him a cassette of my music, and that was the very beginning of my introduction to the music of video game industries. I did some training there. In all honesty, I read non-stop. You can see a couple of books in the background there. And I read them, I keep them there because I'm constantly referring back to them. And I really enjoy feeling kind of inspired by the written word and just what people are saying about things. YouTube is an incredible resource for learning as well. Literally, this week, I've looked at a bunch of tutorials on all kinds of things. Pretty much if you want to learn something, there'll be an expert who's made a video and you can learn for free. I've been partly self-taught, partly some formal training. And because of the nature of the video game world and music technology and sound recording, it's about technology, and technology is constantly changing, constantly improving, and new developments all the time. I think it's important to keep abreast of what's going on, world of technology.
I suppose new possibilities emerge as technology evolves and things are easier to produce.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing about what you just said is that things can be easier, is that when I was making music originally, so we're talking late 80s, early 90s, I think back and it feels like it was difficult because you needed a mixing desk, you needed lots of sound effects, sound processing, things like reverb, delay, you needed a computer, tape machine, all these kind of things. It felt complex. But now the problem we've got, even though you can just open up a computer, a DAW, digital audio workstation, and fire up your application, whether it's Cubase or Logic or Reaper or Ableton, Pro Tools, and everything can just work very quickly because it's all just ready wired. You can just start playing notes into it and it will start working immediately. The problem today is many people are overwhelmed by the amount that is available. If you do a search for free VSTs, which stands for Virtual Studio Technology for the sounds, or free audio plugins, if you do a search for that, you'll see hundreds, which are brilliant. There's some great plugins out there that you can get for free. The problem is, which one do you go for? What sound do you use? And in the past, the advantage was, in a way, that I had initially only the one synthesizer, and I gradually got more. I had a sampler which had 2 meg of memory in there. In a sense, you can argue it was more complex because there was lots of wires to plug in. But because there was so little as far as options, you just got on with it and you just made a track.
The choice was made for you, basically.
Yeah, to a certain extent. And the funny thing is, if you listen to a lot of 90s music, and not a lot of people talk about this, it makes me laugh. You hear a lot of samples that are repeated and repeated. A great example would be something like Jack Your Body by Steve Silk Hurley. If you imagine he assigned the sample, Jack Your Body, to the keyboard, it's as if he's just kept pressing it, Jack Your Body. And part of the reason why is because they didn't have loads of sample memory. A lot of these early dance tracks, what was the beginning of what we now consider house music and techno and rave, they had very few samples. People think it was a creative choice, and partly it was because of the limitations of the technology. They had to repeat over and over again this same sample. So yeah, you were very much, the choices were made for you, and you did the best you could out of what was available.
It's just like pixel art. There was no choice in the matter at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you talk about art because there is a comparison between the two. Art was really basic and a character might be built up of 8 by 8 dots. And it's just a little sprite made up of just a few pixels. And now, obviously, with things like Pixar and Disney and the world of 3D animation, things look just incredible. So in the same way as the visual medium has increased in complexity, audio has as well. And with that, the benchmark has risen. So what is acceptable has gone up. So what you have to do in order to succeed in the industry, it's harder now in that you could have got away with making a fairly basic piece of music in the early days of video game composition. But now the only way you could get away with that is if you are effectively doing like a parody of an 8-bit game, which does work. People are doing it. There was a game about 10 years ago, which I know isn't that recent, but there was a cool game called Fez, and it used 8-bit graphics. Or you could tell that it wasn't really, it was pseudo 8-bit graphics. They were trying to make it look aged, and it made me laugh that they use old-fashioned sound effects. They didn't have to, but it had a really cute aesthetic about it in that it felt like it was an 80s game, sounded like it was an 80s game. But at the end of the day, you have to ask the question, is the gameplay great? That's the fundamental thing what games are about. And the sound effects, no matter how great they are, or the music or the graphics, they have to support the gameplay. The player has to go away feeling like they've just experienced something fun or something original, something exciting. And this game still gave you a feeling of satisfaction when you played it, even though it had a very retro feel about it. It's a really important thing that we can talk about sound and music forever within the game world, but it's critical that it supports what's going on screen and what the programmers have spent God knows how many hours making. It's them who create the gameplay. Make sure that they work together and they feel quite natural and they're giving an enhanced experience for the player.
I suppose there are not so many people that make sound and music for games.
You're probably correct in that there aren't that many positions in the industry. Even a company of maybe even 500 people, it's not that unusual for just one or two to be right in the music. In that regard, compared to the rest of the positions and the responsibilities, what makes a game, they're rarer. But there's a lot of different things you can do if you're interested in sound. The world of sound is an essential big part of the video game experience, and there's more than just music, and making the sound effects is millions of fun. It's such an amazing job to do, but it's as simple as if you like games and you like sounds and music, I'd absolutely encourage people to try to get into that.
There you go. Sound and music have evolved so much in games.
And always be learning new stuff.
Even if you're a seasoned pro, click here to find out what inspires Suddi in his work.